Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by Scott Bright. Scott is the chair of the Early Childhood Education Association of Colorado, president of the Colorado Trails Preservation Alliance, a civic and business leader, and candidate for Senate District 13. Well, Scott, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Brandon. Really appreciate being here.
Well, definitely. Scott, you're actually running for my Senate seat, so I'm really excited to vote for you come November. And I'm also really excited to talk to you about kind of this rural versus urban divide. We've seen it a lot these recent years, both at the state legislature and unfortunately on our ballots. But first off, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What made you get involved in politics?
Right on. Thanks. Um, really excited about this new venture. I have been advocating for high quality early childhood education for my entire life, and most recently, as chair of the Early Childhood Education Association, I've been advocating to legislators at the Capitol every session, looking for high quality options for kids. Um, and addressing some of the issues that are in the current universal preschool program. Uh, the big tipping point for me was I was down there expressing to the House Education Committee chair about how we need to expand some options for 3-year-olds and not have just one option or no options for those 3-year-olds, and really wanted to get some high quality stuff available for 3-year-olds all across Colorado. And as I was going through my 10-minute spiel with that House chair, she slowly got up about 2.5 minutes into my talk and knew where I was going with that and walked over to the door, opened the door, and I kind of turned around and said, I guess we're done here. So it was at that moment that I said, I need to get in the legislature, and that's where I can make a real difference. So having been advocating for early childhood education from the outside for quite some time, I'm anxious to get on the inside and really get some good work done.
So where were you going with your presentation? I mean, what was kind of the conclusion you were coming to that made her get up and leave?
Yeah, so the bill that created the Department of Early Childhood, as well as the structure of the universal preschool program for Colorado, had all sorts of options for 4-year-olds, and I was part of the team that helped develop that. At the very last minute, the 11th hour, they snuck a couple paragraphs into the legislation that forced 3-year-olds that would qualify through local schools only. So the only option for those 3-year-olds was to go to a local elementary school to get that free preschool that they qualify for. I was just advocating for, hey, if we're giving choices to 4-year-olds, then we should probably be giving choices to 3-year-olds as well. If a parent wants to choose a different setting for their child that actually has childcare, rather than most school district preschool classrooms that don't have childcare, they should have the ability to do that. And so as I was walking through that, she knew where I was headed, and conversation over about not even halfway in. So
You know, there's a lot of talk, of course, about choice down at the state legislature, but of course, when it comes to choice in education, a lot of these Democratic legislators, unfortunately, aren't so interested in those conversations.
right, yeah, I'm a big proponent of parent-directed education for kids, as long as they want to be. There are a lot of folks out there that are fully okay with turning the steering wheel over to their local school districts, and I know there are a lot of good options out there. But in the end, the choice, the driver of that education choice, should remain with the parents, and we shouldn't take that away from them.
Well, that's a great point. Unfortunately, we've seen so much legislation, especially this year, that has gotten in the way between that parent and child relationship. You know, some of these politicians, these legislators, they think they know what's best for kids, what's best for families. And it's really unfortunate. You know, everybody's such an individual. Families are so different across Colorado. And for these politicians to come across and say, hey, here's a one size fits all solution that's going to just be for everybody, be for every kid, it just doesn't seem to work.
Yeah, the famous quote out there from one of our presidential hopefuls from a couple decades ago said or wrote a book that it takes a village. And I believe it takes a set of parents that are really dedicated and focused on raising their kids. I think that makes all the difference in the world when it comes to high quality outcomes for kids.
Well, that's a great point. High quality outcome for kids. I think that's what really everybody wants, right? I mean, the legislators on both sides of the aisle, no matter who they are or where they come from, everybody wants the best for the kids. And giving them those different options, letting parents kind of be in that driver's seat, like you said, and having parental involvement with the child as they go through life, I think it is just so important.
I think so too. And running 25 licensed childcare centers, facilities in Northern Colorado, I can tell you that one of our mottos here is we believe that the best place for your child is with you. But if that's not possible, then we want to be that next best place for your kid, and we want to have the highest quality options available for you. And we invest a lot into those high quality options. So I'm really proud of what we've achieved and the service we provide to families in Northern Colorado over 3 generations in my family, and over 55 years for this company, and myself over 30 years.
Wow. So 55 years for your early childhood care company in Colorado here. That's pretty astonishing. And I'm sure you've seen it all over the decades. And I mean, what do you think? I mean, 30 years in this industry, has a lot changed with families, with parents, with the culture. What have you seen?
Yeah, I think the biggest change that we've seen lately is parents that choose to allow electronics to raise their kids. While I understand that might be an easy way out, there are some great tools out there. We share resources to families to help stay engaged and stay connected with their child, and help them be school ready. That's really our goal at the end of the day. At the end of 5 years, when those kids turn 5 and 6 years old and they head off to school, we want them to be ready for school. And I don't think that electric devices really prepare them for school adequately.
That's a good point. I know it's a topic that can be controversial for parents, but these electronics, these cell phones, I mean, these young kids having access to the internet, my goodness, it's no surprise when they're exposed to things that are not appropriate and maybe cause some mental health issues. I mean, there's no real way around that, I think, unless you limit access or cut off access. I mean, what do you think this role of electronics is having in the development of kids? Do you think it's leading to some of these mental health problems or ADHD or any of that?
Absolutely. And I think that's, as we started this thread, I think that is the biggest difference, is the disengagement of the parents, and turning that instructional piece over to that method, to just kind of keep the child quiet and keep them focused, when in the end, what the child is really looking for is that engagement with parents. And they really want to, they have a need to be heard and seen and understood. And I really feel that that's important. And we've seen an incredible spike or ramp up of mental health needs in young kids, 2 and 3 and 4 years old. And we need to dedicate the resources to make sure that those kids are on the right path as they enter school. But we can do a lot to correct that just with some one-on-one training with our parents that we do with them every day, to help give them tools to engage their kids, and really be thoughtful about the direction that they're going.
Oh, interesting. That's nice that you're able to provide those tools or kind of provide some information to these parents, some kind of strategy for helping their kids. Because I think you're 100% right. The kids are looking for engagement. They're looking for somebody to connect to. I mean, that's natural for all humans, but especially children. And if the parents are giving to them, if it's given this electronic surrogate, they're going to seek attention there. They're going to seek validation. They're going to seek engagement. And unfortunately, that kind of opens them up for some bad things.
Yeah, absolutely. The internet's got a great place for everybody to learn and have a massive depth of knowledge, but it has a lot of deep, dark pockets at the same time. And we see families completely blown up with unrestricted access of the internet, for sure.
So a passion for childhood education. What difference do you think you can make down there at the state legislature?
Well, as everyone who has read newspaper, whether it's in print or online, has seen, the rollout of the universal preschool program has been a bit rocky. I must say that I was involved at the request of the governor to help design universal pre-K. It was myself and 19 other folks that sat around the table and really thought long and hard about what universal pre-K could be if it was offered to all families. And so we had a lot of great ideas. I raised my hand and said, I really feel like we ought to have parents driving their education choice. I was definitely in the minority, but I was the champion of that idea. I said that I feel like we ought to have child care companies or childcare providers as an option for those families. And no one else around the table was really, putting forth that idea. If you look at the childcare industry in Colorado, everybody knows that the costs are skyrocketing, and it's regulation on top of regulation on top of regulation that continues to push the cost of childcare out of reach of most families. Um, and so, I would like to see number one, some things corrected in the implementation of the universal pre-K program. I already have some draft language put together and running it through some of my friends that are in the legislature right now and making sure that it's good to go. But want to do that. Um, yeah, that's my first and foremost priority.
Well, I like it. I think that's so important to reduce that cost of childcare. I talk to a lot of friends of mine, young families, and it's so expensive. It's crazy. It's like it's almost as if one of the parents has to their full-time job,
Yeah.
all that money just goes to paying for childcare. It's almost as if they could stay home with the amount of money they're spending. It's almost like a net wash there. It's so unfortunate.
Absolutely. And, roughly three-fourths of the cost of childcare comes from the labor, the payroll, and all the benefits that we pay for our staff. And the government has decided that it knows better how to benefit our staff than we do as business owners. And every business owner across the state of Colorado can sympathize with this. When Denver and Boulder come in and say, hey, we can run your business better than you, we can offer benefit packages better than you can. We've thought of this better than you have for your own company and your own employees. They completely blow us out of the water in our decision making and our ability to fine tune benefits for our staff. They mandate all sorts of things, and that is what drives up the cost of childcare.
Oh, definitely. And it's interesting too to see the governor and some of these legislators come out and almost trying to, address the need through government intervention, right? That early child care, young child care is so expensive. They say, well, hey, we're going to roll it out from the government. Like you said, we're going to do it better. We're going to do it for free, quote unquote, at the taxpayer expense. And unfortunately, yeah, there's been a lot of failures. They haven't really been able to do what they said they were going to do. And it's so unfortunate because that's the story with so many government programs.
Well, and let's make no mistake that nothing from the government is free. It is all taxpayer funded. And name me one program that the government has ever done more effectively and more efficiently than private industry can do. I feel like we have lost track of that, and we just want to shell out twice as much, or we want to force our neighbors to shell out twice as much so that we can get free benefits, and continually increase those benefits down the road. It's fairly irresponsible thinking, and I hope to kind of put a stop to that as best I can.
Interesting. Well, definitely appreciate that perspective. Appreciate your efforts there. I think that's something that voters, that people across the state, excuse me, across Colorado, families definitely would be in support of that. Lowering the cost of childcare, making it a little bit more accessible, easier for parents to raise their kids. I mean, that's definitely a worthy goal.
Yep. Yeah, I guarantee you, if the government gets a hold of childcare, it will not be less expensive than it is today.
While we're on the subject of schools and education, do you have any thoughts on this school choice ballot initiative that we're seeing here this November?
Well, when you pair words together, they become bad words. And then when you pair other words together that mean the same thing, then they have a neutral stance. And so when you talk about school choice, it automatically offends 50% of folks out there. When you talk about parent directed education, then everyone can sign up for that. So
Hmm.
anything that leaves that choice in control of the parent so that they can make the choice for their own child, I think is the best way to go. Anything that forces government on a family is backwards. Now, if families want to choose that by default, great, but they should always have the choice about where to go. And so that would be the core of my philosophy as I approach any of this school choice topics.
Well, I think that's so important, and it's really having that philosophy and kind of that principle behind your votes down at the state capitol. I think is what matters so much. Unfortunately, some of these legislators just seem to vote however leadership tells them to, or the special interests, or the lobbyists, or what they think the polls are telling them to do. But having a principle and having a legislator, a representative, or a senator that actually adheres to a principle, I think would be very appealing to a lot of people.
Outstanding. Yeah, I can't wait to bring that perspective in. Like I say, I'm a business owner. I have to make payroll every 2 weeks. I have to make decisions, that folks live and die on with their jobs. And that perspective is rare at the Capitol, and I can't wait to interject some of that in the decision making every day.
Well, great. Well, I'd love to, anything else you'd like to talk about with education or your passion or reason why you're running for office?
Boy, we can go all night. I think we have a limited amount of time, so let's shift gears and head into the next topic.
Perfect. Well, I'd love to talk to you about the rural kind of rural urban and divide that we're seeing so much here in Colorado, unfortunately, especially in recent years. Scott, it seems that the voters down in Denver, this I-25 corridor, control so much of what happens for the rest of the state. Whether we're talking about the Western Slope or the Eastern Plains, it seems like a lot of voters don't feel like they have a lot of say at what goes down to the state capitol. So I'm really excited about your campaign, this idea of somebody who's actually going to stand up for rural Colorado, stand up for their community that they're representing.
Awesome. I'm excited to do that. I live on a farm, and was raised on a farm. Spent a lot of time in my childhood growing up in Greeley. The early years when I was first married, we lived in Greeley also. But I really am drawn to the rural setting. My first job was milking 120 cows every morning at 2 a.m. So I have a close tie to uh, the rural communities, the cycle of life that happens out here, and the incredible opportunities to produce for the rest of Colorado right here. I really enjoy that.
Well, definitely. I mean, especially when you're talking about Weld County or this northeastern part of Colorado and even southeastern, there's so much productivity. There's so much food that comes from it. And unfortunately, sometimes the politicians out in the legislature just don't remember where their food comes from.
That's right.
So unfortunately, one of the things we've seen here is this ballot box biology down in these last few election cycles. Of course, the wolves here in Colorado are decimating so many mountain ranchers, and now this year we're seeing a proposed ban on lion hunting. I mean, what's your perspective on these ballot measures?
Here we go again. We have Denver and Boulder making decisions for the rest of the state. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. If you would ask all of the farmers and ranchers that are impacted where the wolves have been released, I think you get probably approaching 100% of them that would say this is not a good idea. We understand that wolves belong in nature. We get that, but the impact it'll have on wildlife in this area will be catastrophic. You look at what wolves have done to the elk population in Yellowstone, and it is catastrophic. It's quite unfortunate.
Well, yeah, and just all these stories, story after story of all these young cows, these calves, cattle being killed in these mountain ranches. I mean, it's tragic. I mean, that's for one, it's really expensive, right? I mean, cattle's expensive. If you're a rancher, I mean, that's your livelihood, that's your lifeblood, that's how you feed your family. And for two, just the tragedy of losing these animals to a government-sponsored program that's putting these predators to attack livestock. I mean, it's almost too hard to believe that this is what's going on here in Colorado these days.
It's nuts, really. It is. My tongue-in-cheek response when the idea was being discussed is I said, all right, well, let's take a vote amongst all the counties in Colorado and the counties that vote for it. I mean, let's just release the wolves there. Everybody wants wolves, but they don't want them in their backyard, right? So let's force them on other people. I hate that idea of forcing rules on other people. The philosophy is just disgusting.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah, it's been tragic, and unfortunately, it's an inexpensive tragedy as well. Taxpayers on the hook for all of these problems we're experiencing. Another really interesting aspect about your campaign is who you're running to replace. So the current senator, the incumbent, if you will, is Kevin Priola, and he's definitely been kind of a renegade in so many ways. Flipping parties, sponsoring some of the most extreme legislation we've seen in years. Just this last year, his bill to basically ban oil and gas production in Colorado was more of a statement than anything I remember him saying. But at the same time, I mean, it's a statement to show that oil and gas is not welcome, according to legislators like him.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. I mean, I haven't met Kevin personally, but boy, I've heard a lot of stories over the past year that I've been campaigning. I talked to a whole lot of folks who spent a whole lot of time campaigning, calling for him, working out of his house, texting, emailing, just fundraising, and really getting out the vote for Kevin. And then to see see him switch parties with 2 years left in his political career here in Colorado is just interesting. But then to see him go so far to the left and literally undercut his entire constituency just blows me away. I don't understand. I mean, there is no math that supports that. Um, I'm out in the country right here, and as I look out my windows, I can see 4 or 5 different oil and gas wells. And I know that those oil and gas wells are what heats my home and every other home that is in Colorado. It also goes over to the power plant right over there that generates electricity for every house in Colorado. So um, it's really amazing that our former senator tried to put the good portion of Weld County blue collar workers out of business, out of work. That just blows me away.
Oh, it's crazy. Somebody who's supposed to actually be representing their community, who is elected by the people in their community, and then just totally attacking one of the biggest industries in that community. I mean, when people lose faith in the government, it's because of things like this.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the cubic dollars that the oil and gas industry pumps into our school districts, do you know how heavily impacted our school districts would have been undercut and their budgets would have been cut if that would have succeeded and we would have rolled oil and gas out of the state entirely? You think we have budget problems now with schools? It would have been catastrophic if this legislature would have passed.
And unfortunately, these attacks have been going on for years. I have a little screenshot here from back in 2019, Senate Bill 19181, where that was really a big attack on the oil and gas industry. We're still living with those implications today. And then just to read from this editorial, this is from the Gazette from earlier this year, March 2024, quote, "The bill currently pending in the legislature would limit the number of drilling permits issued in 2028 and 2029, bar the state from issuing any more such permits beginning in 2030, and require drilling to begin at all previously permitted sites by 2032. It's a total ban, in other words, on tapping into the oil and gas reserves of one of the nation's top energy producing states."
Amazing. And the oil and gas that Colorado produces is incredibly clean. If anyone cared to take a tour of it and look at the data, look at the statistics, it is the cleanest form of energy that we have, and it's right underneath our feet. Um, if we were to ban oil and gas completely in Colorado, we would end up buying it from foreign countries and funding Russia to attack Ukraine, funding Iran to attack Israel. I mean, literally, we would be pumping billions of dollars towards those nations to buy their propane, buy their natural gas, so that then they could fund their wars. Like, there's no math that makes sense on this.
Right. And this is a bill that definitely got some big headlines back in March when it was presented and then ultimately killed. But it's one of those things where people might have forgotten. There's been so much happening politically this year between March and now. It's easy for this to have gotten lost. So I really think it's important that people are reminded of the implications of having somebody in the legislature, especially somebody who's representing rural Colorado, to be on the side of oil and gas for once, and not somebody like the previous senator who was willing to totally ban it in the state.
Nuts. You have my word that I will take none of those paths. I believe that oil and gas is the lifeblood of Colorado, and we need to keep it here and keep our houses warm and keep our lights on with the resources we have right underneath our feet.
Definitely. Well, definitely important. And I think that is important, as well as farms. We talk about oil and gas, we talk about ranchers, we talk about farmers here in Colorado. Colorado has such a rich agricultural tradition, and we still have a lot of family farms. Thankfully, unfortunately, there's one here in Brighton, in your district, that's been around for 95 years, made the headlines just a few months ago because of a threat of a shutdown from eminent domain. I mean, what do you think about what's going on with Palese Farm?
You know, I have followed it a little bit. I'm not perfectly close and know all the details, but I do know that city councils are in charge of reviewing proposals by metro districts to bring in the infrastructure to develop neighborhoods. That's the job of the city council, is to review those metro district proposals. And so I just have to look at that. And I know that, the metro district serves a purpose. The metro district is not the evil entity here. Like, it's trying to bring roads and infrastructure and water and sewer to these places where, unfortunately, Colorado is one of the largest, fastest growing states. I mean, it's gonna happen, right? So we need to make sure we're handling those things in an appropriate way. And it's the job of the city councils to review the plans by those metro districts to put forth to say, is this eminent domain request proper? Or should we do some more studying and reroute it? You know, what other options are out there? So I know that the Palese Farm Metro District proposal passed on a 9-0 vote. And so it may be the right thing to do. It may not be, but I think it kind of lies at the feet of the city council.
Oh, 100%. I mean, it's something. I went to one of the city council meetings. I couldn't believe the outpouring of support from the community. I mean, people holding signs. The city council meeting was packed, and that's a rare thing, no matter what city you're in Colorado. But especially, I think in Brighton, it really ignited the community to show up and get involved. And just to provide some background for people who don't know, this is a 95-year-old family farm. Brighton's kind of grown up around it, but it still serves such an important purpose in the community, providing fresh produce, providing jobs for people, and really just being a centerpiece of people's lives for such a long time. And like you said, there's development. So a metro district was created to build a little suburban neighborhood. And unfortunately, the city council didn't do their due diligence and didn't realize that this drainage area, this would go through this family farm and potentially shut it down. So the people who own Palese Farm were extremely unhappy. They rallied the community. Unfortunately, we're still kind of waiting to see what's going to happen exactly, if the farm's going to shut down or not. But really tragic. Unfortunately, like you said, the city didn't do their due diligence. They failed. Here's kind of a picture of it. For anybody in Brighton, you've definitely heard this story, I'm sure. For people in Adams and Weld County, this has been a big topic, is these poor family farms, that have been so important for so many people for so long, just kind of getting steamrolled by this new development and these politicians just not doing their job representing the community.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say about that other than the Metro District is definitely operating on the orders that were given to it by the city council. So if we want to try to pick out who's responsible or whatever, like the Metro District is just operating based on the plan that was provided from the city of Brighton.
Well, another reason I wanted to bring this up, is because we've been talking about this rural versus kind of urban divide, talking about standing up for oil and gas, but also standing up for agriculture, as we're talking about now. But the person you're running to replace, we've seen, has been just an enemy of oil and gas in his last year in the legislature. And then now your opponent, somebody who's running against you for the Senate District 13 seat, is the city council member who voted to create this metro district without doing his due diligence, failing to protect Palese farms, and really leading to this unfortunate and tragic situation.
Yeah, understand that. And I had a chance to probably visit the city council meeting that you did as well, and saw the outrage, the outcry from the citizens of Brighton, because this farm is important to that community. And I really wish there would have been a different outcome for them. I don't know if there's anything that can be done at this point, but I mean, I guess we're just gonna have to leave that up to the attorneys at this point. But I really feel for the Pleasies and their farm, and I wish them the best of success. I really hope that we can find a solution on this. But bottom line is that this entire episode could have been avoided with some work from the city council.
Well, yeah, 100%, 100% couldn't agree with you more. And I just think it's so important that, the people in the community have somebody representing them in the state legislature, somebody who's not failing to protect family farms, somebody who's not going after oil and gas. I mean, this district needs somebody like you who's going to go up there and actually represent them and do your due diligence to protect the community. So tell us a little bit about Senate District 13.
Yeah. So Senate District 13, sounding like a broken record because they say this so much, but it spans from Greeley through Brighton. And so as it was redistricted in 2021, it used to be 100% within Weld County, and now it includes the Brighton portion of Adams County. So it was shifted a little bit to be from a predominantly red or Republican Senate District 13 to more of a 50-50 district. And I believe that the folks in the legislature who drew that up, who were in charge at the time, had a goal there to make this much more competitive seat in the Senate. There's a lot of that goes on every census year. And unfortunately, Democrats have been in control and in charge of that. So we don't want to lose this seat. Weld County does not want to lose this seat. Weld County does not want to be represented by someone outside of their county. And I mean, if you look at the county line towards the bottom, like predominantly the square miles in this is in Weld County. So I grew up in Greeley, I live in Platteville, right in the middle of that district. And I really hope that I can represent them appropriately, as well as the folks in Brighton.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it's interesting. Brighton's such a growing community. There's so many people who've moved there over recent years. So much new development, as we've seen with the Polizzi Farm issue. But I think, the voters there, the people really need to be aware of differences between their candidates for office and who's going to be standing up for education, for providing better opportunities for parents to direct their education, as with you. And of course, being an advocate for the community and the oil and gas industry that probably employs a lot of people in this district.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. The folks in this district really deserve that. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, definitely. Well, tell us a little bit about your campaign in terms of how can people support your campaign? Anything else people need to know?
Yeah, thanks. So I do have a website, scottbright, coloradosenate.com. You can read all about what I stand for, what my principles are. There's a donate button there if you wish to help out with the campaign. It takes cubic dollars to run marketing efforts to get in front of folks so that they know who to vote for. And that comes through donations. And so really appreciate anyone who can help out in any way. Number one, I'd love to have your vote. Number two, if you can donate to the campaign, that would be outstanding. And I'm anxious to get to know each and every one of you. I've been knocking on doors pretty much every single day, getting in front of every group that will have me to talk to them, even if it's 3 or 4. I really enjoy connecting with the people of Senate District 13 and visiting with them and understanding their stories, and aligning with them on so many ways. I haven't had anybody walk away from interaction that said, yeah, I think I'm going to do something different than what you're talking about. So really excited to finish this up, be successful on November 5, and then serve the people of Colorado.
Awesome. Well, really appreciate it, Scott. Definitely encourage people to support your campaign. I know I'll be voting for you, like I said earlier. And any final words to leave with people?
Mm. Thanks so much, Brandon. I really appreciate it. Thank you for giving me this time and space to be here. And hopefully this connects with a lot of people. Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, appreciate you, Scott. Take care. I hope to see you down at the legislature next year. I'll be looking for you to be a champion of our Colorado way of life and our liberty values. So hope that can happen.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Take care.